February 2026. A man in South Carolina pulls down a Confederate flag from his porch, and his neighbor calls the police. 3 states away, a school board in Virginia votes to remove the word slavery from a textbook and replace it with involuntary relocation. 200 miles north, protesters clash outside a courthouse over a statue of Robert E. Lee. You'd think we were talking about a fresh wound, something that happened last year, maybe last decade, but this war ended 161 years ago. Or did it? The American Civil War killed more Americans than World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam combined. 620,000 soldiers dead. That's roughly 2% of the entire population at the time. Adjusted for today, that would be like losing 7 million people. And yet somehow, the thing that tore this nation in half never fully healed. Because the truth is, the Civil War didn't end at Appomattox. It just changed battlefields. Here's what most people get wrong about the Civil War. They think it was about ideology. North believed in freedom. South believed in tradition. Good versus evil. A moral story with a clear ending. The reality was far more disturbing and far more interesting. By 1860, enslaved people in the American South were worth more than all the railroads and factories in the entire country combined. The total value of enslaved humans was approximately $3.5 billion. In today's money, that's over $100 billion. Slavery wasn't just a cultural practice. It was the single largest financial asset in the United States. It was Wall Street before Wall Street existed. Cotton picked by enslaved hands didn't just clothe America, it fueled the entire global economy. British textile mills in Manchester ran on Southern cotton. French banks in Paris financed Southern plantations. New York City's shipping industry moved Southern goods across the Atlantic. So when the South seceded, it wasn't just a political rebellion, it was an economic earthquake. Imagine if tomorrow, the world's largest oil-producing region simply declared independence. Markets would collapse, alliances would shatter, wars would start. That's exactly what happened. And here's the part they don't teach you in school. The North wasn't fighting to free enslaved people, not at first. Abraham Lincoln himself said in 1862, and these are his words, that if he could save the Union without freeing a single enslaved person, he would do it. The Emancipation Proclamation wasn't a moral awakening, it was a military strategy, designed to destabilize the Southern economy and prevent Britain from entering the war on the Confederate side. The Civil War was, at its core, a war over money, power, and the future of an economic system. Freedom was the side effect. Now zoom in. Forget the generals and the politicians for a moment. Think about what this war actually looked like at the human level. At the Battle of Gettysburg, soldiers reported stepping on fields so thick with bodies that you couldn't see the ground. Surgeons amputated limbs for 72 hours straight, stacking arms and legs outside field hospitals like firewood. The smell of death carried for miles. But the psychological horror went deeper than the battlefield. This was a war where brothers killed brothers, literally. The Crittenden family of Kentucky sent one son to fight for the Union and another for the Confederacy. Both became generals. Senator Henry Clay's grandsons fought on opposite sides. Mary Todd Lincoln, the president's own wife, had 4 brothers fighting for the Confederacy. Imagine sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner, knowing your family is literally at war with itself. And then there was the information war, something eerily familiar to us today. Southern newspapers printed stories claiming that Lincoln was a tyrant who wanted to destroy white civilization. Northern papers portrayed every Southerner as a savage. Both sides created their own version of reality, their own set of facts, their own truth. Sound familiar? The Civil War didn't just split a nation geographically, it split the American mind. It created 2 parallel stories about what America is and what it should be. And those 2 stories, they never merged back into one. April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrenders at Appomattox Courthouse. The war is over. The Union wins. But what happened next is the real tragedy, and the key to understanding everything that followed. For 12 brief years after the war, a period called Reconstruction, something extraordinary happened. Formerly enslaved people voted held public office, started businesses, built schools. 16 black men served in the United States Congress. Mississippi elected 2 black senators before it would elect another one for over 100 years. It was the closest America ever came to actually fulfilling the promise of all men are created equal. And then it was ripped away. A backroom deal decided the contested presidential election. Republicans got the White House. In exchange, they pulled federal troops out of the South. Without protection, black citizens were left to the mercy of the same people who had enslaved them. What followed was a reign of terror. The Ku Klux Klan murdered thousands. Jim Crow laws made segregation legal. Voter suppression became an art form. Literacy tests, poll taxes, grandfather clauses. The progress of Reconstruction was systematically dismantled, piece by piece. And here's the part that should chill you. The Confederacy lost the war, but won the peace. They couldn't keep slavery, so they built something almost as effective, a caste system enforced by law, violence, and economic control that would last for another century. The monuments went up, not during the war, decades later, during the Jim Crow era, as symbols of white supremacy disguised as heritage. The Confederate flag was resurrected in the 1950s and 60s, not to honor the dead, but to oppose the civil rights movement. Every symbol of the lost cause you see today was manufactured long after the last shot was fired. So here we are, February 2026. The counties that voted Confederate in 1860 overlap almost perfectly with political maps today. The states that seceded still rank lowest in education, healthcare, and income equality. The economic patterns of slavery, extraction of labor, concentration of wealth, they didn't disappear, they evolved. When you see debates about voter ID laws in Georgia, you're watching the great-grandchild of a poll tax. When a school board in Texas rewrites history curricula, you're watching the lost cause mythology update itself for a new generation. When you watch Americans screaming at each other on social media, operating in completely different realities with completely different facts, you're watching the information war of 1861, just with faster technology. The American Civil War isn't a chapter in a history book. It's the operating system running beneath everything. Think about your own life for a moment. The neighborhood you live in, the school you attended, the wealth your family does or doesn't have. For millions of Americans, these things trace directly back to decisions made during and after the Civil War. Redlining, housing discrimination, educational inequality. These aren't accidents. They're the compound interest of 161 years of unfinished business. The war killed 620,000 people, but the peace that followed, the broken promises, the stolen progress, the mythology built on lies, that has shaped the lives of hundreds of millions more. Every nation has a founding myth, a story it tells itself about who it is. America's myth is that the Civil War was a test, and the nation passed. Good triumphed, freedom won, the end. But what if the real story is that the test never ended? What if every generation since 1865 has been fighting the same war, just with different weapons? Here's my question for you. Can a nation truly heal from a wound it refuses to examine? Or is America destined to keep reopening the same scar, generation after generation? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this video made you see the Civil War differently, share it with someone who thinks history doesn't matter. Because it does. It always does.